Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing well, Sarah. How you doing? Happy podcast day.
Happy podcast day. Happy last day of September.
It is. Happy. It is. This year has like zipped by, and we were just talking right before we started recording here. Just like so much content is dropping this last quarter of the year.
Yeah, I'm starting to have a stomach ache just thinking about all the content that we're going to consume within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. October is just, it really is going to be just a lot of stuff. I mean, which is, given where we were last year, where we were all like the shows that were able to get filmed before the pandemic, and then the ones who had to cut their production short because of the pandemic, like Doom Patrol, which we're going to talk about tonight.
Right.
It's now it's just like, man, it's like drinking water from a fire hose with the amount of content that's coming.
Yeah. It's last week. I think I mentioned how Billions is back, and they are incorporating COVID as part of the show, but it's also not as obvious to me, because the way they're wrapping it this season up, and then they're gonna come out in the spring with a fresh new season.
Right.
But it was like a seamless thing. I couldn't believe it. I've seen a lot of these shows who go on break, and it doesn't feel, when they come back, it just feels tacked on. But man, those writers really did a seamless job of working it into the storyline, and also clearly sticking to how they wanted this season to wrap up.
Nice. Yeah, because you can definitely tell in the productions in this COVID period, how scenes or people are paired off, and things are shot and whatnot. You can definitely tell, and so that's amazing that they were able to do that. And I haven't watched Billions beyond, I think, a few episodes in the first season, but I do remember just reading about how they were going to integrate the real life events into the storyline. Yeah,
it's a lot more subtlety on that show than it is on the morning show, which, good Lord. God. That show, I really liked the first season. I'm mixed about the second season. I don't know.
I've heard
about it.
Yeah, I've heard that from on a few podcasts about how people are ambivalent about the second season of that show. Yeah.
Well, speaking about shows returning because of the Netflix big Comic-Con event, whatever you want to call it, we got a few trailers and announcement dates on when things are returning, including Cobra Kai season 4 dropping on December 31st.
Yeah.
We both didn't really care for the third season.
Yeah, it was all right, but
I was mad.
yeah, it was disappointing. Given, and we were like, not to sound like we're like the old, the old heads or whatever, but we were sort of the cool cats who actually watched it on YouTube before it made it to Netflix.
Right. And the first and second seasons were really good, and then something happened with the third season, and if I will be honest, the season 4 trailer makes me concerned that it's going to stick to the similar direction that season 3 went. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm on the fence on that one. I know we were talking about planning ahead, and I even commented to you. It's like, we can push, we don't have to worry about if, given that it does drop on the December 31st, New Year's Eve, we have to slide it back into January. I'm okay with that, just because I was like you. The trailer you're right. It gave me that season 3 vibes, the things that I was kind of like, all right, it has just shtick worn off, as far as this show, and they're getting, with obviously with the martial arts stuff. I mean, you just sort of have to just ride with it and just suspend your disbelief and just ride with it. but there were just other things about it that just seemed this didn't flow as well as the first 2 seasons did. So
yeah, but thankfully when that drops, we also will start getting the Book of Boba Fett on Disney Plus. I've been missing the Star Wars content, I have to say.
Yeah,
I know Visions, and I hear good things about Visions. I know there's been a few other animated Star Wars shows that have dropped since Mandalorian season 2 wrapped. But I really like Star Wars live action, and so I'm excited that this is coming quickly.
Yeah. I did watch the first episode of Visions, and I really did like it. I think if you're an anime fan, you'll definitely will get into it. I'm kind of a fringe anime person, but I really did like it, and plan on watching the rest of the series. I haven't watched Bad Batch yet, though. I think this still in the queue to watch.
Yeah, still in the queue. Other things that are in the queue for 2022, date yet to be confirmed, are both Stranger Things season 4 and the trailer, as well as Sandman on Netflix. I watched I just remember like one scene from the Sandman trailer, and I remember hearing about this show, I think during last year's fandom event. And I was very interested after I was watching the writers talk about the show. And this trailer just took me right back to that conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about it, that's for sure. Am I curious about Stranger Things season 4? I don't know. It's another one of those shows where it's been such a long time since we've had Stranger Things in our lives, and it's I remember really liking the last season, but worried that it would just continue the same pattern. Now this trailer did intrigue me because it seems to like they're incorporating some new elements.
Yeah, but
I don't know if that's just what they're showing and want you to think, when the reality is like, yeah, this is a lot of what you've already seen before.
Yeah. I mean, the kids are like grown ups now, but I wonder if this is going to be like for you. I thought about you this weekend when I watched the trailer, because and how we had a gap with like Mr. Robot, and I know I was still engaged in that show, and I know you pretty much checked out of that train because of that. And I think there's some of the story choices and other things as well, how that last season went with that show.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way with Stranger Things. It's like I'm intrigued. The trailer definitely was like, okay, I think we will get something new and fresh with this story, taking it out of Hawkins and with that haunted house and obviously I noticed Finn Wolfhard was not as prominent in this particular trailer, so they really focused on some of the other characters. And they didn't do like all the 11 teases like they did in the prior ones either. So I think they did show some more, and of course all the the right beats. You had the Ghostbusters little button on the one kid's backpack and stuff, and so I'm actually looking forward to the 4th season.
Yeah, I'm glad it's returning. You've brought Mr. Robot up before, and I honestly don't think that that's gonna happen again. I just, because they're very different shows and I have very different experiences with them.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, well, it's coming. It's gonna be here, and we'll see what they have in store. I'm glad they're focusing on some of the other characters. But yeah. And the last bit of news we have is the Disney and Scarlett Johannson lawsuit has been settled. And Will, I hope you have more information on that.
Yeah, this is like breaking news this evening. Disney and Scarlett did settle. Of course, everybody put out their very nice statements about how great each party is, because she is going to continue to do projects for the House of Mouse. Yeah, her statement is like, I'm happy to have resolved our differences with Disney. I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done together over the years and greatly enjoyed my creative relationship with the team. I look forward to continuing our collaboration in years to come. And Disney also had similar types of kind statements. And according to Deadline, obviously whenever these mega lawsuits are settled, or any lawsuits are settled, there's always, many times those settlement agreements are confidential. But of course, Deadline, through their sources, noted that the payout could easily be around $40 million or more. Mm-hmm. Not to be paid out in a lump sum, but I think, probably just dispersed with various projects that they have coming up. I think they have the Tower of Terror, I think, is one thing that's going to be coming up. And of course, as far as the project that she has with Disney. And so I'm sure as part of the settlement agreement, any kind of assuming that Disney does any kind of day and same day release streaming, I'm sure they have a lot clearer parameters as far as how they're going to pay for her work in those future projects. And I'm sure they have also made sure that any language as far as compensation is no ambiguity, so that they won't be going back to very vitriolic statements that were being made. And and when this first happened, I think when we talked about it, we were like, it's going to get settled. I mean, nobody wants to go to court. Right. It's not good for anybody. But that was breaking news this evening.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they got it resolved, especially on the heels of this most recent What If episode, which just while I was watching it just confirmed to me how pinnacle of a character Black Widow is in the MCU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel as though she's been used in a lot of these episodes of What If. And this one, I mean, they moved away from her, but I feel like every so often, majority of the time, there's an episode and she just magically appears.
Yeah.
And Lake Bell's doing a pretty good job of imitating ScarJo's voice, mm-hmm. although it's not as deep as ScarJo's, but yeah, it's good. And so on that note, we did get part 1 of 2, I will call it.
Yeah.
What if Ultron won? Well, the answer is simple, Will. We all lose.
Everyone.
Everyone freaking loses.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about this since early on in the season, that eventually the Watcher is becoming more of a character, and in this one, Ultron becomes aware of the Watcher, which led to a showdown, and even him questioning this oath that he took and mm-hmm. trying to see if he can get Black Widow and Hawkeye to save the day and everything. It was a decent episode. There's something about those first few episodes that I really liked, and I don't know what it is, but right now I'm just like, okay, what's the end game here? Let's wrap it up. I'm ready to move on and get a dose of something new. But it was a decent episode.
I thought it was a very good episode. I watched it twice because last night the first time I watched it, I was kind of tired. And so I felt like, am I hitting to the place of Marvel saturation? Because I liked it, but I wasn't like blown away by it, like say the Doctor Strange episode, for example, or even the T'Challa one. So it felt like I guess the third episode, it felt kind of like the Print episode for me. It was like I liked it, but I wasn't like, oh, this is the best ever. But I watched it again today, and I have to say, on a rewatch, I was like, it definitely like it rose up several notches for me too. I was like, yeah, this is actually a very good penultimate episode, and then does what you want a good penultimate to do, which is to set up, for the finale, and really, and on the rewatch, a really gathered all the elements that we've seen throughout the season really coming together, and you're right about how integral a character Natasha has been in this What If series, but also as I was watching it, I realized also how Clint has become as well, because in all of the episodes he's been just like Natasha. He's been around and playing some key components, whether it was in the third episode where he when Prim had him kill Thor by accident, and in the murder mystery one, and then and some subsequent the zombie one, and other ones as well. So what I liked about this episode, it ended up being the two quote unquote normal folk
right.
who were ultimately the ones who were going to help save the universe.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And what I was thinking about is how there's been two other episodes this season that both harken back to Avengers 1, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, and now here we have a tie-in to the second Avengers, and those episodes really feature these two characters in particular. And I think why is exactly what you just touched on, with like, these are the characters with the least super powers on the squad, and yet they still are able to carry that torch of hope, because they have their humanity is intact, and they're both trying to find redemption in some way, which I think is interesting. But it's good. It's good, especially when you're dealing with a character like Ultron, who within the first 5 minutes just wins.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't dick around about it at all. They just like, okay, he is going to win this. We are going to, quickly, they'd have the exposition and here's what happened in Age of Ultron, but here's really the Age of Ultron. That was just a marketing ploy. Avengers 2 really didn't have, it was more about destroying Sokovia.
Yeah. I just wonder if, because I'm with you, where yes, the T'Challa episodes really stand out to me, but that Doctor Strange episode just hit in such a different way and resonated that I can still picture images in my mind, and I've only watched it one time, but I can still picture frames, because there was something so fascinating about it. And I just wonder if the intent is this series is not necessarily leading up to No Way Home, but more Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah. It with what happened in this episode with the Watcher ended up in Steven's own universe, and how they tied those two together. And I loved, the folks on, I think maybe Kind of Funny or another thing I was listening to today noted how they did a great job of like hiding the fact that Strange was going to show up in this episode by not having his name show up in Benedict's name show up in the credits at the beginning. But I like the way they tied that back. I think you're right. I think there were plenty of one-offs like the Party Thor episode last week. We may see elements of that down the line, because I mean these movies are so self-referential to each other. Even if it doesn't mean in big stuff, it may not be a big overarching thing, but they'll throw a little nod to something But I think you're right. This really is honing in on, and we talked about this even at the beginning of What If, carrying forward the multiverse storyline from Loki,
right?
And WandaVision, but really Loki, and then this episode really does seem to be the springboard to Doctor Strange 2, thematically, and it would not surprise me if we get some serious beats from whatever transpires next week, which I guess, judging from all the promos and things we haven't seen to date from the mid-season trailer, we will have our new Avengers, I guess, for this What If universe, multiverses, show up to take on Ultron. So I think whatever the end result comes from next week's episode, I think we'll have some repercussions down the line with other films, in particular Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah. Well, that's what they said from the beginning. That's why I've been watching, is because you told me, like, Sarah, it's gonna tie in. I'm like, okay, forgive me. But it's been a good journey so far.
Yes, overall.
Most of the episodes have been better than. There's been some definite bad episodes, but most of them are pretty decent.
Yeah, I would agree.
Speaking about magic tricks and sorcery, we got to talk about Stargirl. Stargirl comes off of arguably one of the best episodes, not just of their season, but I just think of any show on the CW. Because it was so different. It was executed so well. And only to follow up with this episode, which, like, what happened in the writer's room? Because I feel as though they were like, yeah, this is teenagers, and we're going to focus on summer school, and they won, but there's some PTSD, and then Eclipso comes out, and all of a sudden, like, high drama, welcome to October, creepy stuff is going to be happening, and you're just, when you think you know what's going on, there's a twist. Because I think this episode is brilliant.
Yeah.
Two storylines, not really connected, but you're so used to seeing these kind of A and B plots. There's been enough with Beth and Rick for you to understand what's happening to them. And just when you think, like, oh, well, Eclipso is clearly just taunting Beth, she wins, you realize, no, he's been trying to take out both of them simultaneously. And it was just heartbreaking what happens to Rick.
It is.
It's just I mean, Grundy's gonna break him out, but
yeah. Yeah.
I didn't see it coming. I totally fell for everything. And I was sitting there, and once it was revealed and they did that shot where it's like Grundy's all beat up, and then they reveal it's actually his uncle, and you're just like, oh. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. That, when I was watching that episode, and it was really, this is why Eclipso is probably one of the, as far as on the CW verse show villains. I mean, there is Reverse Flash until they overused that Thawne in the Flash, and then the next is Eclipso, because just the danger and how, we talked about when we first started reviewing season 2 of Stargirl, Eclipso's going to use your fears and things about you against you in a way that will that was his trick, that was his thing. And so with Beth, and what he he's been capitalizing, of course, and it makes him begin to question whether or not her parents are really getting divorced or not. Because of what we saw in this episode and what he's done with Yolanda and the visions. Because it was smart last week when they kept things ambiguous about what's real, what's is this just even whenever she saw the fake brainwave, was this in her head or is this? And then they carry it forward this week with events, and it was believable whenever Beth, they were sitting in the living room having this dinner, and I was just like, God, this is just so gut wrenching whenever you're hearing Eclipso using the divorce and for saying Beth was the reason, blaming the child for it, which is one of the probably the worst thing. Thank God I never had to deal with that. But just talking with friends who have been through, parents separating and stuff. I mean, just hearing that kind of talk, and just and using Beth's own, I guess, questioning of what should I be on this team, and and they've had and it really does a great job of tying in all that discussion they had last week with Yolanda. And well, could you kill, or could you, what good are you in a fight, and.
Well, it also, it echoed back to the first season of when we met Beth and how she did join the team, which I thought was great for people who have been watching both the full arc and it makes you realize that, she may still have doubts about her own ability, especially since at the end of the last season, the glasses broke.
Right.
And so now she's on this team, but she doesn't have what makes her special. And I think that's why the speech at the end of it was so powerful, because it was about her believing in herself.
Yep.
And choosing to be Dr. McNider and not using that as a crutch to make her feel special, because she is special.
Right. Yeah. And I remember us talking about that too, because we had the whole legacy thing with Courtney and Rick, and even Jade, whenever Jade first appeared, and we were wondering, we lamented how criminally underutilized and they were utilizing Beth early on in the season, but they were just again, as I mentioned before, this writer's room and this showrunner team understands how to pace and build up things with their characters and not, and I don't know if it's, and again, part of it, I think it is COVID, you can't only, they probably did have to structure having so many people in scenes and whatnot, but they use that to their advantage.
Yeah. And I mean, the episodes that don't 100% of the time focus on Courtney and her issues work far better.
Yeah.
This season. I don't know why. I think I said that last season too.
Yeah. But they
issues which never resonate with me.
Yeah. But even with that, they have found a way to even though Courtney's the lead, they found a way to use her correctly in these episodes when they focus on supporting the other members of the team, because we learned that she's named a staff. And I love that moment between Courtney and Dugan and Pat when they were there in the garage about, well, you named the Stripey, not me. Those little endearing moments. So, so I think they found a good way to really utilize the cast and not in a way that just seems like other shows. Why the hell is this even in this? This could have ended up on the cutting room floor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, they're definitely planting seeds for Courtney's big encounter with Eclipso that's coming. But I mean, while they're doing all of that stuff with Beth, it just astounded me that they had this very believable thing between Rick and Grundy. Wanting to protect him, and then when you see the girl died for a moment, and I cannot, I really thought, I was like, oh, okay, so Rick thinks that Grundy killed it, but it's going to turn out that there actually is a bear in the forest, and the bear killed it. I seriously thought that.
I thought it was somebody else. I thought it was somebody else and not Grundy. Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, I definitely did. And then when she disappeared, I was like, oh shit. And then, but they did it twice in the same episode with the same storyline, because even when he was facing off against Grundy, I did not think, I mean, I initially thought it was weird. I'm like, well, why is Grundy at Rick's house? I mean, how does he know where he lives?
Right. Yeah.
And why is he acting this way? And then, but it still was, my mind didn't go there because Eclipso was all about Beth this episode. So you don't even think like, oh, well, clearly he's manipulating both of them.
Yeah.
It was so clever of how they did that from a writing perspective of just being able to not only trick the characters but trick the viewers. Because the viewers should know what's going on, and the tells are really easy, but they got it by like me really quickly.
They did. And you notice the one thing about that girl is, that was the little girl from the very first episode.
I didn't notice that, but that makes sense. That seems like an Eclipso thing to do. And you're absolutely right. He is up there on villains, but it's funny. I think he's up there because initially when he was first revealed, you guys know me, I was like, oh my god, this is a character from Power Rangers.
Yep.
I still think that. However, the way that he is torturing these kids, masterful.
Yeah.
And the writers are really doing a good job at not only terrifying the kids, but also getting into the viewers' heads as well. So
get in their heads. And then another thing that the writers did well this week with Beth and the character too. I mean, and it was hard to sometimes hear it, but the racism and the sexism and you people. I mean, as soon as he said the you people thing, I was just like, oh yeah, they're going there. And props to Angelica who was able to bring that. That pride. She's like, I'm proud that I'm black, and I loved also the scene whenever she was with her parents at the end, and asked them like, how did you deal with it, Mom, when you guys first moved to Blue Valley, and having that talk that many families of color have with their kids. It resonates with all members of the audience too. Which I think is another really strong thing about this show is that, like you said, they're doing a masterful job of like keeping us unbalanced as far as how they're unfolding these stories. But also they've done a really good job of making you care about these characters and being engaged with the story. So I mean, props to them. And then of course, next week we do get John Wesley Shipp, Jay Garrick showing up, so I'm sure they'll probably get a lot of maybe more people will discover this show next week because they do have this sort of mini crossover with the Flash.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. We got a lot to come with that show. Now, another show, we're not going to talk Titans tonight because Doom Patrol first 3 episodes dropped last Thursday, and then the 4th episode dropped yesterday, and I don't know what it is, Will. I'm going to be very honest. I love Doom Patrol. I really do. This I wasn't as engaged during the episodes. I started to get a bit more engaged during the 3rd one because I did think it was pretty cool, the whole afterlife and the tie-ins. But I don't know. I just first of all, within 5 minutes, Candlemaker, who I remember from the previous season, terrifying villain, a lot of power.
Yep.
So how did they resolve this? Oh, Dorothy makes a deal with him? I don't understand. Within 5 minutes, it's resolved.
Yeah, this was like, our season was cut short. Let's just quickly tie up all the loose ends that we would have, tied up in the season. Basically, it'll happen. I think several of these shows, all their season finales became season premieres.
Not on Billions, okay, but definitely on this show. Yeah. I really I think that left such a bad taste in my mouth that I couldn't get into the episode completely, because I'm just like, seriously.
I agree. I get part of it too was just like, there's this that sense of anticipation. I mean, I will freely admit I was like I haven't been this hyped about a season premiere for a show in a long time. Mm-hmm. And so when I watched the first episode, it was like, okay, I was let down. I admit it. I was a little let down too.
Yeah, it's just there, and that doesn't surprise me, because how many times have we talked about expectations? Well, never get them high.
Yeah.
But
I enjoyed the episode. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't that I mean, all the beats were there, all the wacky, the zaniness, the things that I love about the show, all were there, and they hit. I mean, it wasn't that they didn't hit for me. It was just like I was just so, so hyped for that first episode. But I will say the second and third ones I loved. I mean, I definitely did, and I was like, okay, that's just why this is like my favorite show right now.
I'll give you the third one. The second one was fine. I thought it was cool how they went on vacation, and then we got to meet Gargox. And I was, but I don't know. There's something about these first few episodes where it felt like Doom Patrol, but I was missing like a gut punch. I was missing something to really make the zaniness grounded. And that's why the third one sticks out the most, is because you do have this tale about these characters who, quote unquote, we spent a season talking about like they're immortals.
Yeah.
And now they're dead. And what does that mean? And who they, very good pairings of who they meet in the afterlife and why that's important, especially in terms of this season. I mean, we have Vic with his mother. We find out that potentially there was another way for his dad to save him, but he chose the cyborg way, we'll call it.
Yep.
Which was very interesting. We got Cliff with his dad, and which is great because Cliff, I don't know who has more daddy issues, Cliff or Jane. Really.
They're different. They're daddy issues. Both of them have daddy issues, but for different reasons.
Very different. I mean, Cliff even went on to granddaddy issues, I guess. But and then we have Jane with Kay's grandma, which I thought was so beautiful what they did with that tie-in. And I like that we got a lot of Kay. We got a lot of Kay in these first few episodes. I don't know what they're doing with Jane, and Jane's arguably probably my favorite character out of the bunch. So maybe that's where some of my trepidation comes from, where I'm just like, okay, I don't see the arc. I see the arcs with the others.
Yeah.
I
think with Jane, this is just to pick up on that point, because with the first episode, we did get some closure, even though it was all the puzzle things but with the underground, and then basically, I mean, I guess the primary who basically, I mean, I think you could say it was a stand-in for Kay's father, with how he was treating Jane as far as who was going to be the primary.
Yeah, you could say that.
I mean, I think, and to tie it, but to Kay and then meeting her grandmother later, and who else we also find out his name's Jane, and that's why she picked that. So I think there were some tie-ins. I think the first 5 minutes of the first episode just dealt with, okay, let's just get through the second season, wrap that up. But then that back half of the episode, I think, is what did redeem that episode for me in how they really resolved those issues with Jane and Underground, and and like you said, really established that stronger presence of Kay and seeing the two of them together. And I'm just trying, and like you, I'm trying to figure out how, as we move forward, how Kay and Jane will interact as I guess Kay gains more confidence over time, right. And how that will impact the Jane prime persona, since that's essentially grown up Kay.
Yeah, but I think I think I guess what I'm trying to figure out is these first few episodes after they wrapped up last season is definitely flipping the script on this idea of morality with these characters, because last season we talked a lot about how they are immortals, and so this is life for them, and so what does that mean? But now they are experiencing death. They are experiencing not being 100% healthy. I mean, who the heck knows what's going on with Larry right now? Yeah, Larry's got to get his negative spirit back, but I do like what they're doing with Cliff and the Parkinson's thing.
Yeah,
I thought that was very clever.
Yeah, that was very clever as far as with the Parkinson's and with Larry, with the negative spirit, and carrying it forward to this fourth episode with how it ended with the bump. That to me that seems like the throwing up and stuff. It seems like and the bump seems like he's pregnant. It's like morning sickness or something.
I wasn't gonna say it, so I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said it. Maybe the -4 got a little carried away. I don't know.
Yeah.
But with afterlife, with death comes life. So
yeah. Maybe that's the arc. Maybe that is the arc with Larry this season. And I know going through because I think with I felt like the first episode it felt a little retread with Larry, because I thought we had gotten him and negative energy spirit, like they had reconciled themselves, but then they went off into space and then he leaves them or does something with them. So I felt it was maybe a little step back, but then we, of course, where we are now, I'm like, no, I think Larry's having to figure out like how to live without this entity that's been in his body now for 50 or 60 years or whatever.
Yeah, well, he's got another entity in his body
and maybe,
that he's got to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I did like the Dead Boy Detective Agency.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were cool. The writers have a way of bringing in new characters that fit within this universe they've constructed.
Yeah.
And the Dead Boy Agency made sense. I was caught off guard when Dorothy decided to go with them. I was not seeing that coming, but Dorothy made a deal with Candlemaker, so why do we need her around?
Yeah, and she may show up again.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with you. She's gonna show up again, but
yeah. With Dorothy, and I guess we haven't talked about the Chief, and that was how I was wondering, because I know I had read somewhere where Timothy Dalton was not on set hardly at all because of COVID, but they did. I'm actually surprised how much he is in in this season, because I mean, really in the promotion materials leading up, they really didn't focus on him much at all. So I really thought he was going to be gone. I mean, since we thought, since he died.
I was thinking about that while watching these episodes. I was like, wow, Will told me a different thing was going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's what I had read. I mean, I even had read it. He was like, I'm not, and that's great for them for like being able to, maybe that was just part of part of the press junket was just like to say, yeah, I'm not around much or, or hardly at all, because, to keep that surprise. And how, we did have the end credit scene, I guess, at the end of the first episode with Kipling, severing his head, which apparently is I saw someone that posted the frame from the comic book, which is very, was taken from the comics that Kipling did that. And of course we saw, the consequences of that in this week's episode. And then of course in the second episode, we, was the second or third episode with the chief and the sex ghost. He was just like, God, hell. Or maybe it was at the end of the first one. Yeah, it was the end of the first one. They all start to run together, but the sex ghosts are definitely like, staples of the house. This, even though I don't think they appeared this week, but with the zombies. But it was, like I said, the second episode for me stood out. I think I need a Samuelson who's going to like follow me around with a megaphone and announce my entrance in the room, like Gargorax had, and then of course they had Mullah and the Brain, which were nice, elements from the comic too, like you said, how they introduce these characters into the story and to make the larger point. They fit into this weird universe that they've constructed.
Yeah, and now we have a new character because Dorothy left, but. Mm-hmm. A new tag along, so to speak. This is the Fog, right? Is that what his name is?
Oh, Madame Rouge?
Yeah, okay, it's Madame Rouge. I don't know. Yeah. I tried looking IMDb. They said the Fog.
Okay. I don't know. There will be I think the Fog does show up this season, but Michelle, but the tag along that we have right now is Madame Rouge, as far as with the group who showed up. As well because we had Rita and her my bees, and then of course the actress who plays her gets sucked into the sinkhole whenever Madame Rouge shows up. So remember when Madame Rouge showed up at the very end of the episode?
Yeah.
I mean, and then of course Rita had. Rita was, she was finding herself because, she was dealing with all her issues, discovering that, it wasn't her talent that got her all these acting roles. It was her mother, sleeping with the producers and stuff.
Yeah. Clearly somebody who watched the most recent season leading up to the show returning. And then me, someone who just like goes through these episodes and is like, oh yeah, I remember that. This is lost on me. No, I think she's a good character add. Rita's another. I always have mixed emotions. She's definitely grown on me since season 1. Mm-hmm. I'm curious where her character is going to go, and how Madame Rouge does seem to be a big villain for her. So I'm glad the show's back. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do still adore this show and love these characters. And maybe it was because I wasn't in the right headspace. Mm-hmm. I've had some other things going on my mind as of late. But I am glad that it's back. I hope we get some Cliff Steele action going on. I miss those two. And we'll see. Yeah.
What do you think about tonight's episode, the zombies?
Like honestly, probably I think I paid attention once I figured out what was going on. I checked out for a good 60% of it, and then I returned to it at the end, and it just felt like a filler episode. Yeah, it didn't really do anything. It definitely they were trying to wrap up the 3-episode arc with them dying, while at the same time trying to point these characters in their directions that they're going to go this season. So I'm not saying it was filler as in wasteful. It definitely had a point of we're starting here and going to end here. But yeah, overall, I don't find too much about this one that I would want to analyze and dissect.
But yeah, I mean, I know there were a lot of funny moments. I mean, there definitely were like laugh out loud moments throughout.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will and Polk, WILLMPOLK.
You can find me on Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and our website at www.snnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.